Welcome to OmniTalk powered by Nexoft. I'm your host, Amy Rice, and OmniTalk is a podcast focusing on fintech and how it affects banks and credit unions. Today's episode is part 2 of a 2-part series with David Peterson, CheckAlt's Chief Strategy Officer. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, definitely check it out. David and I will be finishing our discussion about how CheckAlt is helping their customers transition to electronic payments. We'll also be talking about where David thinks the payment landscape is headed. Can you explain how CheckAlt assists its customers in implementing a successful strategy to convert all of those smaller paper checks into electronic payments?
Sure. So again, their payment is somebody deciding that they're going to pay a vendor. So you have a payor, you have a vendor, a biller, or a payee, and they're making a choice about how they pay. So a lot of times a organization will already have a portal. They'll already have a way that somebody can access and get information. Think about property management. Think about a company that is working with homeowners associations. In fact, there might be a company that literally provides software to 500 homeowners associations. And interestingly, each one of these homeowner associations may not be that big. I live in a neighborhood in South Georgia. There's probably, 35 or 40 houses in that little, just 2 streets, but it's got its own homeowner association. And you pay these dues, it may not be much, $75 a year or whatever. So there's already a portal for that company to provide those services to the homeowners association. And you know how those people pay? They write a check, they put a check in an envelope, and they get it down to Shirley or Bill or whoever is the local person, right, who's collecting all of those. Now instead, CheckAlt says, hey, homeowners association, you can just have a link right here, and everyone can just simply go in, open up the link, and they can simply do an ACH, which has the exact identical effect of having that $50 debited from their account, or they can pay by debit card, or they can pay by credit card. And so just by empowering those companies to provide as a part of their own services, how electronic payments can take the place of a paper payment. That's part of the strategy. The other thing that we do is somebody says they've got their own portal. They've already got the ability to acquire information about the payment, but they're not actually executing the payment. So they've got their own front end. They've got their own API to gather the information. Now they're using an API on the back end with CheckAlt, where we're actually doing all the work behind the scenes to actually power and make all of those payments. If it's ACH, create the ACH files. If it's credit card, interface with the card networks and gateways and all of that. So this is what makes what we're doing so powerful. Is somebody needs a complete and total branded. We provide the whole front end, and it's a standalone URL. And they put their name on it. CheckAlt provides that. Somebody wants to send out an email and just have a link where somebody can click on the link and be able to pay their bill electronically. And when that link goes, it takes them to a UI, which allows them to put all their information, branded that entity, but CheckAlt's powering it on the back end. Somebody's got their own front end. They just want to power this on the back end. CheckAlt has that. Across the entire spectrum of the ways that people would want to power the electronification of a payment that might ordinarily have gone through a paper-based check, or just organic, standalone, just straight up, this is the way that we want to offer it. We're not even allowing people to do checks, but they can pay by ACH, they can pay by debit card, credit card. CheckAlt is powering those things for both direct entities as well as channel partners like financial institutions who are providing those services to their downstream businesses.
So CheckAlt and Nexoft just kind of signed a partnership that we're very excited about. We love all of our partners, but I know that we're very excited about the partnership with you guys. Can you explain why you chose Nexoft to be an integration partner?
Absolutely. Nexoft is really doing something revolutionary. And Nexoft, to me, is like in the Douglas Adams Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Now, I get it that many of your listeners may not know that book, but I encourage you to look this up. But in that story, he was talking about that there was this thing called the Babel fish, and you could stick it in your ear, and no matter where you went in the universe, whoever was speaking a language would automatically translate it so that you hear it in your brain in the language of your understanding. And if you think about it, if we actually had such a device, that would be really cool. The idea that sort of a universal translator, in at least it might be a silly example, but what I see in Nexoft is they're basically saying, at the end of the day, everybody's got to get access to these cores. And you're trying to do, this company's trying to get access to core because simply they need to know what the customer's available balance is. This one needs access to the core because they need to be able to memo post a transaction. Whatever the reason is that you might need to get to a core, literally hundreds and hundreds of fintechs like CheckAlt all are trying to go out and say, oh, we want to provide services. Okay, well, I have Fiserv's DNA core, or I have Jack Henry's CIF 2020. So on and so forth. So now, if I want to do something that touches that core, as CheckAlt, do I have to go out and create 6 interfaces for FIS, 8 interfaces for Fiserv, 4 interfaces for Jack Henry, and then there's DCI, CSI, COCC, and on and on and on. And who knows how many little small mom and pop little local service bureaus. That is a very daunting task for a fintech to have to go very broadly across all these cores. And here comes Nexoft. And Nexoft simply says, you work with us. And as you have needs that you want to be able to reach and touch these, we're going to give you a way of interfacing with us. And just like Douglas Adams' Babelfish, we're going to go out and we're going to communicate to the core, interact with it in a way appropriate to what you're trying to do, and return back, acknowledgments or, a job completed or data such as your application needs. And the ability for Nexoft to do that and do it in the elegant way that it does it is powerful beyond any kind of measure of what the alternative effort and cost would be. It is really special. It's an integral part of what we're doing with CheckAlt. And quite frankly, we're just scratching the surface. We're just beginning the early stages of reaping the benefits of that Nexoft integration. And I can only imagine that the fullness of that over time, as we really ramp it up and as Nexoft continues to improve all the things that it's doing, I see this as a powerful, powerful partnership that's going to last for many, many, many years.
Being in marketing like I am, you're always trying to think of new ways to visually represent what your company stands for and essentially does. The Babelfish is a perfect analogy of what our API connectors do for our partners and how they help to break through that language barrier. We're so excited for this partnership with CheckAlt, and we can't wait to show everyone what we have in store for the future of fintech.
We are excited about it.
With all of your kind of extensive knowledge in the payment industry and kind of what's happening right now, could you talk a little bit about the payment landscape for this year after, the crazy year that we just had, and what you see happening in the future?
So we're 2021 as this podcast is being recorded, and there are a number of initiatives that are happening now, specifically related to this term faster payments. And, it's interesting, Amy, that we talk about faster payments, and yet we already have some things that are faster payments. So checks actually process a lot faster than they used to. And we have things like PayPal and Venmo and Zelle. And of course, there's this new thing that's relatively young in its life cycle called RTP from the clearinghouse. And this truly is a new form of payment. And they're just really doing the marketing, and a lot of the largest financial institutions have rolled it out. And so it does portend to be something that would have a particular application, I think, in that B2B space. So, is RTP going to cannibalize and take away check-related business? Perhaps. I think that's certainly their marketing plan, their life cycle rollout of that is that it would. I think it's more likely that it is going to be used, at least initially, to replace wires. So you think about what happens when a big company needs to send $1 million today from one company to another, and it has to be there right away, and you wind up sending a wire. And so long term, if you had another way where literally it was a payment that you could execute and the credit was received just a few seconds later, that would be the equivalent of a wire. And certainly that's what RTP portends to be. And they are also adding some great features in there about passing along remittance information, which is super important, as well as the credit. Now, the Federal Reserve has something that they've announced called Fed Now. It's not going to be out until 2023 or 2024, depending on who you ask. but it will be very similar. It has very similar attributes to the RTP environment. And as I think about this, and we talk about faster payments, those RTP and FedNow aren't really faster payments. They're instant payments, something that literally when you execute it, I mean, it's done. It's actually settled. Money's in the other account in 2 seconds. So there's many applications where that is something that absolutely has to happen. But the vast majority of the applications, or let's call them the use cases of a payments mechanism, don't have to be settled that fast. So there's instant payments, or real-time payments, and then there's fast enough payments. So what I think we're going to see the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, you're going to see some additional payments come out that allows somebody to push a credit to any other individual who has a bank account in the United States. You don't have to have the same app. You don't have to know who that person is. If you go to a garage sale and you see this really nice Takamine car that you know is probably worth $1,500, and they're asking $750 for it, but you don't have $750 of cash, then you get into this whole dance of, well, you take a check. Well, no, it's out of state. I don't know who you are. Okay, well, no, I don't have PayPal. Do you use that? No, I don't do Zelle. And there's this whole crazy thing about, well, here, you got to load the app so I can give you money. It's like, wait a second. All I need to do is have that person that owns the guitar to look at their mobile banking and see that $750 showed up. And if they got $750 in their account, here, they'll let go of the guitar and you can walk away with it. So there's the kinds of payments we have now. Same-day ACH is probably vastly underutilized. There's a lot more applications for same-day ACH that should be mined. And there are some applications for these instant real-time payments like RTP and FedNow. In between, there's fast enough payments. And so I think you're going to see perhaps multiple fast enough payments that actually will wind up getting a lot of adoption, particularly by consumers who need to transact with somebody who needs to know that they're going to get the money, but doesn't really care whether I have this app or that app or whatever. Yeah, look at my phone. Did money show up in my account? Okay, then the transaction's over. So that's something that I think the Nexoft podcast listeners can look for. And especially when you're talking to a vendor and they talk about faster payments, ask a question. Well, how fast is faster? How fast is fast enough? Is instant or real time so fast that it's really expensive? Well, what do I do if it doesn't have to be that fast? I think these are important questions, particularly for FIs to ask, because they're being bombarded, particularly a lot of community banks with, oh, you got to do this. And oh, if you're not on top of this, you're going to be behind and so forth. At the end of the day, ask a few questions. And if vendors you're talking to can't intelligently answer those questions, then maybe you should look for other vendors who maybe can offer a better, more cogent argument about just how faster payments need to be.
I think those are some things that we're all going to be on the lookout for in the future. So just to wrap this up, I just have one more question for you, and it's a question that I ask everyone who guests on my podcast. And that question is, where is your favorite place that you've ever traveled? I know that the last year has been, an obviously crazy one, and people have been stuck at home. And now that people are getting vaccinations and things are kind of opening up, it's cool to hear where kind of your go-to place is.
Oh, wow. It has been so hard to not have that whole 14, 15 month of non-travel. In fact, I'll tell you that I had a sailing trip. So I'm certified to captain sailboats up to about 70 feet. And so I had a trip in May of 2020 to sail in Antigua and Barbuda, but it, of course, got canceled because of COVID. And fortunately, here in just a couple of weeks, we're going to be able to complete that trip that we tried to do a year ago. But I will just say I've been extremely blessed to go to a lot of places. With the exception of Asia, I've been to all of the other, major land masses of the earth and had a chance to stay in really nice fancy hotels and stay out in the middle of the South African desert in a what do you call it? A hunter's lodge, bare bones with just a fire to keep warm. Overall, if I had to just pick one place, they said, okay, David, you could go and you can spend a week or a couple of weeks in this location. Where would you go? I would have to say it's the ABC Islands. That's Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. These are the former Dutch islands that are right off the coast of Venezuela. They're at the very, very southern tip of the Antilles chain of Caribbean islands. and they're outside of the hurricane belt. They don't ever get hit by any hurricanes. You can go there year round, and each island is different. Bonaire is really kind of quiet. Aruba is super touristy. Curacao has a mix of tourism and business. They have a big industrial port there and so forth, but all of them have their own unique things that they add, but consistently across, there is never a bad experience anywhere. The people are so warm and engaging, and you can just literally walk off the beach and swim 40 yards away from the shore, and you will be in some of the most beautiful coral and fish. And I mean, you don't have to go off on some special boat and go put on a whole diving suit, whatever. You can just take a mask and snorkel, and the whole undersea world of Jacques Cousteau, that's a very dated reference. The most beautiful things that you would ever want to see in the ocean are literally just walk off the beach, just swim off the beach. And it is so amazing to be in that locale and be around such great people and eat such great food, culturally rich. That would be my, I can't say it's my bucket list because I've been there many times. That would be my go-to. I got to go back to the ABC Islands.
Yeah, that's amazing. Last year in April of 2020, we had a trip to St. John, which is in the Caribbean, canceled. So we just rebooked it for New Year's, which I'm very excited about. But
excellent.
There's definitely no place like the Caribbean in the world. It's my favorite place in the entire world too.
I can't wait to get back there here in just a couple of weeks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, David. You definitely shared a lot of information about checks and transactions and kind of what we, should see in the future. And I appreciate you spending the time with us today.
It was my pleasure, Amy. And again, we look forward to continuing the great relationship we've started with Nexoft. It's truly going to be a big part of our success in the coming years.
Yep, the feeling is definitely mutual. This episode of OmniTalk was sponsored by Nexoft. Nexoft is your all-in-one stop to help your company secure, connect, and optimize your data. Welcome to Data Done Right. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of OmniTalk. New episodes are released on the first and third Mondays of each month. To learn more about how CheckAlt is advancing payment technology, visit www.checkalt.com. As always, stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you next time.